You don't often see the King's Gambit played by super GMs, so when Jan Nepomniachtchi played it against Alireza Firouzja, we knew we were in for fireworks. So why did he go for such an aggressive opening? Well, this was their Armageddon game in Norway Chess 2021, so the classical game had been drawn, Jan had white here and was in a must-win situation, Alireza had black, just needed to draw to take the victory. So Jan had 10 minutes on the clock, Alireza had 7, and let's see what happened. And if you love a daily chess video, do hit that subscribe button to never miss one. So King's Gambit was on the board here. Firouzja captures that pawn, we had knight to f3, and now knight to f6, a really interesting variation known as the Schallopp variation. So you allow white to go e5, kicking your knight to the edge of the board, and after pawn to d4 setting up the big centre, black is arguing that because you've held this pawn, you box in this bishop, make it a bit difficult to develop like that. So we now had pawn to d6 challenging that centre, queen to e2, comes to that e-file, very tricky move, and already black has to be careful. Say you go bishop to e7 here, getting ready to castle, this is actually a mistake because you can take here, say the queen recaptured, then you have this queen b5 check move. You're hitting the king with check and you're picking up this unprotected knight on h5. So black has to tread carefully, and instead of bishop e7, Firouzja captures here. The knight recaptures, opening up the attack of the queen here. There are also discovery threats down the e-file now, and so the only move black has to stay in the game here is queen h4 check. So white blocks with the pawn, and we now have a really interesting variation. You can't capture with the pawn like this, or knight g6 check comes, the check is coming from the queen, and you're picking up the black queen here with the knight. So that's why black has to take with the knight here, which Firouzja did. You fork these two pieces, but white's whole idea is that you capture the knight, you give up the rook in the corner, and although you're now an exchange down and a pawn down, you have a big initiative, a big lead in development. Now you don't want to start hunting pieces with knight g6 check. This would be bad because you can block with bishop to e6. Yes, white picks up this rook in the corner, but now knight c6 comes. And black's getting all of his bits out. The tactics aren't quite working at the moment with pawn to d5. You could have knight d4, there are other moves. So here white's just lost all of that initiative. Black is a lot better. So Jan understands this. He didn't go for that discovery. He played bishop takes on f4, getting those pieces into the game. And here Firouzja goes instantly wrong. Quite phenomenal really that a super GM could go wrong on just move 10, but that's how crazy this variation is. So he should actually play bishop to d6 here as the best move. And the reason this is the best is because even though knight g6 looks really scary, once again it's not the best way to play because you're not developing pieces. You could block like this, and although you give a rook, you're preparing to actually get your king castle to the queen side after a line like this. That knight's still trapped, black is better here. Now coming back here after bishop d6, you don't have to play that discovered check. Best is knight c3, and okay, the game goes on. But Firouzja didn't play like this, he went bishop to e6 instead. And although it blocks the e-file from these discovered checks, there's now big problems with d5 coming later. So we had knight c3 first, developing, preparing d5, and now Firouzja has a really tough decision to make. Not only is d5 coming, but castle's queenside, and then bishop g2 is coming very fast as well. And this queen is actually getting trapped, as we can see, if you're not really careful down this h-file. So Firouzja tries to mix it up here. He goes pawn to g5, hitting that bishop, and after pawn to d5, which was an excellent response by Nepo, Firouzja takes this bishop on f4, we have captures here on e6, and now Firouzja develops his bishop to d6 here. If he tries to take this pawn like this, the problem is queen c4 comes, hitting this pawn here, also hitting c7, so if you jump back with the queen, let's say, to cover this, then white jumps in and takes on c7. Lots of threats to take here, to check on c8, really bad for black. So instead of going for the pawn takes, Firouzja tried instead bishop to d6. We had castles queenside from Nepo. He doesn't even capture here yet, just brings more pieces into the attack. Queen h6 covers this square, and now queen to b5 check came. Firouzja blocked this with the knight now, and Jan took this pawn on f7, forking rook and queen here as we can see. So Firouzja picks up on e6, and now Jan doesn't even take in the corner here. Amazingly, this actually blows all of his advantage, because now after castles queenside, the king gets to safety, the rook's hitting that knight which is trapped. So instead of playing like this, Nepo goes bishop to c4. Excellent move. The final piece joins the attack here. The queen has to move away with check. King to b1 came, and now although Firouzja goes queen to c5, desperately trying to get the queens off, Jan's having none of it. The attack rages on here after knight takes on d6 check. Once again, he just ignores that rook in the corner, because this is really powerful. After the pawn recaptures, forced because the rook was looking here, he can then pick up on b7. He's attacking this rook here, and if you try and save it with rook to b8, then we have queen f7 check. The king moves across, knight e4 comes, and so on. You can see that everything is just crashing through on the d file. So we didn't have rook to b8. Instead, Firouzja tried queen takes on c4. We had queen takes on a8 check. The knight came back to d8 to block that check, and now rook to e1 came. And this is just devastating now for Firouzja, because Jan has all the pieces in the attack and the material is even. King to f7 was played. The queen took on a7. We had king g6 here, and pawn takes on f4, opening more lines for the rook here as we can see. Queen c5 was now played, trying to get these queens off, but rook g1 check came, supported by this queen from afar, and this was actually the final move of the game. Here Firouzja resigned because mate is coming soon. Just to show you one line, say you go king to f6, then queen g7 check could come, king e6, rook e1 check, and now after the king steps to f5, there's queen g5 mate on the board. If you enjoyed this game, then do subscribe to the channel, and to see Firouzja playing Carlsen in an Armageddon from Norway Chess, click here. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.